Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Good Stuff. I'm your host, Kevin Bille, and as always, appreciate you spending some time with us today. I am fired up for today's guest. I'm a personal fan, and just getting to know him a little more and talk to him, I'm just amazed at his story. So we are joined today by Damon West, motivational speaker, best-selling co-author of The Coffee Bean, and also wrote he's the author of The Change Agent, how a former college quarterback, football, sentenced to life in prison, transformed his world. Damon, man, it's great to have you.
Kevin, man, thanks a lot. And thank you for sticking with us and being patient with me, man. My schedule got crazy, but you never once just said, hey, you know what, jerk. So I was like, I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Just the rude persistency on my end. Well, hey, Damon, I don't know how else to do this other than like jumping into the deep water right from the get-go, because we could probably go into some of these issues that you and I have already touched base on, but you can't do it without telling your story. And I've said on here a number of times, like, everybody has a story and everybody has a struggle, and I have a great deal of admiration and respect for both. But man, you are this college quarterback at North Texas. You're eventually trained to become a stockbroker. And long story short, I mean, drugs, meth to that point, and it starts with cars, and then it becomes you're the uptown burglar, right? I mean, all of this happens along your path, and then you're sentenced to 65 years in a quick trial or a longer trial, but a quick jury. 10 minutes or something, but let's just go right into it, if you don't mind, Damon, with those details, please.
Absolutely. So, and it's like whenever I speak in front of a team, Kevin, or a team or group or organization, people that want to be speakers, they get in touch with me, which is weird that people get in touch with me if they're aspiring to be a speaker. And they're like, how do I start my presentation out? And I mean, literally, I start my presentation out with a SWAT team raid going on, because you're looking at a guy that's a very clean cut looking middle-class white guy in front of you. But then I talk about, I'm sitting on the couch with my meth dealer smoking meth, and a flashbang grenade comes through the window and blows up in my face. But literally what I'm trying to do when I go into a room is throw a flashbang grenade in the middle of that room. Because after that SWAT team raid story, everybody's locked in. They're like, man, that just took a weird turn, and they're locked in and you've got them. But let's go past that SWAT team raid and jump right after the sentencing, man. The jury just sentenced me to 65 years in prison for being the uptown burglar. These burglaries went on for 3 years, and they looked at the guy across the courtroom from them that had it all in life. I mean, I grew up in a great home. My mother, my father, they're still married to this day. They've been married 52 years. My dad was a sports writer growing up. First sports writer to put black athletes on the front page of a sports page back in 1971 down in this part of Texas. They freaked out down here when they did that.
I bet, yeah.
But so I was raised around good people, and my parents always, instilled in me to do the right thing, even when, especially when doing the right thing means you stand alone. Having integrity is what it's all about. But I had a lot of issues. I got into substance abuse at an early age, and I had a bad belief system. But my life went on, and eventually I got introduced to meth, and the burglary started, and I committed a lot of crimes to fund my addiction. And after 3 years of committing property crimes, the Dallas SWAT team arrested me. And the jury, like you said, they spared no minutes or time at sentencing. They went to deliberate for 10 minutes. And so the courtroom is clearing out. The sheriffs and the bailiffs are dragging me out of there in handcuffs. And they put me in this little side room. It's got a bulletproof glass right there. They tell me to wait. And the trial lasted for 6 days, first of all. 6 days is a long criminal trial in Texas. So my parents come in to that little room. They're going to give them one last visit with me before I go to prison. They're exhausted. I'm exhausted. I mean, everybody's exhausted after 6 days of trial and a life sentence. And my mom does the talking. She's got 5 minutes. And she says, baby, debts in life demand to be paid. You just got hit with one hell of a bill from the state of Texas. She said, but you said you did the things they said you did. So you have to go and pay that debt to society. But you owe your father and I a debt too, David. She said, we gave you all the opportunity, love, and support to be anything you want to be in life. And this is how you repay us, what we saw in that courtroom. She said, that's not going to work. She said, so here's the debt you're going to pay to us. When you go to prison, you will not get in one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type gangs, because you're scared because you're the minority in there. She said, it's not going to work. You were never raised to see race, and you won't start now. She said, you will not get any tattoos while you're in that prison. And I mean, I tell people all the time, I show them my arms. I mean, like, these guys want to tattoo every inch of your body. I spent almost 10 years in prison for the crimes I committed. And I mean, anytime those guys asked me about a tattoo, I'd be like, man, I can't do it. My mom said no, because that day on May 18th, 2009, my mom said, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, you come back as the man we raised, or don't you come back at all. And this is tough love coming from my mom, Kevin. I mean, but she said, she doesn't flinch. She said, do you understand this debt you're going to pay? And I'm like, yeah, Mom, I got it. But man, what do I know, Kevin? What do I know about the penitentiary system? I'm a white middle-class guy in America, man. What do I know about being incarcerated? So I get back to my pod in Dallas County Jail, and I'm asking all these guys that have been to prison before, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, and I'm asking them, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And they're all telling me the same thing. And you got to get into a gang. The gang is your family. You're going to the worst part of the prison system where everybody has life, the life sentence building. You have to get into a gang, except for this one guy, this older Black man named Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Jackson, he's what you call a career criminal, man. He's been out of prison all of his life, probably in his 60s. I never got his age, but he's the most positive guy I've ever met, Kevin. And he comes up to me one morning. He's got a smile on his face, a cup of coffee in his hand. And he said, West, man, I've been watching how you're dealing with these knuckleheads and these dummies. Talk about you got to get into a gang. He said, do not listen to these fools. He said, but let me lace you up. Let me tell you what prison's going to be like. And that's when he starts explaining prison to me. Prison's all about race. And because it's all about race, when you go in the door there, you got to fight all the white gangs for your independence first. He said, and if you don't give in to all the white gangs out of fear, he said, then you got to fight the Black gangs. So they're going to send the Black gangs after you. The Black gangs are going to be happy to come after you because you will not get with your own race. But he assures me that he said, you can survive all that. You can survive all that. And he tells me that day, he said, you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. And that's a huge lesson in life, Kevin. I mean, that's something we need to be reminded of daily. I mean, I tell myself that daily, but he sees that even though he's explaining this all to me, I'm not really grasping it because I've got this glazed over look of fear in my eyes. And he says, let me break it down for you another way. He said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. And anything we put in that pot of boiling water will be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. He said, I'm going to put 3 things in that pot of boiling water and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. And then he walks me through it. He says, if I put a carrot in that pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, what happens to the carrot? And I told him it turns soft. And he said, that's right. He said, the carrot goes into prison hard, but the water, prison changes the carrot, makes it soft, breaks it down. He said the carrot got beat, he got robbed, he got raped, he may have gotten killed. He said, what about the egg? And I'm like, well, the egg turns hard, Mr. Jackson, like a hard-boiled egg. And he said, that's right, West. He said, the egg is a shell that protects it physically, but inside that shell, that soft liquid core, his heart becomes hardened. And he said, if your heart becomes hardened, you're incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love, you have become institutionalized. And you won't come back as someone your parents recognize because your eggshell will have swastikas tattooed all over it. He asked me at that point, what about the coffee bean? And I had no clue, Kevin. I really didn't know what happened to a coffee bean in a pot of boiling water. And that's when Mr. Jackson shared with me the story of the coffee bean. He said, if I put a coffee bean into that pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you have to change the name of the water to coffee. Because he said the coffee bean, the smallest of these 3 things, he said, small like you, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot because the power was inside the bean, just like the power is inside of you. And he's telling me about people's energy. And he said, you'll either infect the rooms you go into with your negativity or affect it with your positivity. He said, but you're going to attract whatever kind of energy you put out. And that's when he tells me, if you walk around prison with a smile on your face, the other coffee beans in prison will find you because of your energy. Never let those guys get you down. And the last thing Mr. Jackson tells me before I go to prison in August of 2009 to go serve that life sentence, he tells me, West, go out there and go be a coffee bean. Kevin, be a coffee bean. If this old man is shooting me straight, that means that the power is inside me. And if the power is inside me, that means that it's not in the hands of the criminal justice, not in the hands of the guards or even the other inmates. And if the power is inside me, then no matter what environment I'm in, I won't just survive this. I'll thrive in this. And it's such an important lesson for life, especially with what's going on right now in America, Kevin. I mean, you've got the coronavirus, you've got the murder of Breonna Taylor, the murder of George Floyd, and all the stuff that's going on right now in this country and in this world. The world's a giant pot of boiling water. Yeah. But if we look at it like the coffee bean, that means that we say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to let it beat me down and turn me soft and sad and weak like the carrot, or turn me hard and mad and mean like the egg. I'll be like that coffee bean. And my life story is about being that coffee bean inside that pot of boiling water called prison. And the visual that you get from that, the importance of that lesson is that if I could do this inside of a maximum security penitentiary with all the lifers in prison, then you can do this in your life too. It's the example that's in front of you. You can't deny what you can see. If this guy could turn it around, and it's all documented that I did, I turned it around, then you can do it too. And it gives people hope.
Well, Damon, I've heard the story multiple times, and I don't want to say it gets better each time, but I'm just amazed by it. It's so commendable. And I guess I probably thought of 7, 8 questions maybe ahead of time, as I always do, but now my mind's going and racing after I hear it and I'm sitting here talking with you. So I guess just to backtrack a little bit, somebody out there maybe listening is headed on that path. So let's just backtrack to when you were headed down that path, and knowing what you know now, what led you down that path, and what insight could you provide to people that are going that way to get them off? Like I know Natrez Patrick, I heard you tell a story about him. That would be maybe an insert right now, and what you did for him. And you can't do that for everybody, but you have to have some type of words of affirmation for them right now, that would resonate with where they're at.
Yeah, and the path that you're talking about going down is a path that's created by bad belief systems. And belief systems, I tell people that all the time, your belief systems tells you how to do things, and if you have a bad one, it tells you how to do things the wrong way over and over again. It becomes very habitual. And the longer you hold on to a bad belief system, the harder it is to get rid of. And here's the truth about belief systems, Kevin, is they usually win out in the end. They're very hard to change a belief system. And so, I can talk about my belief system from a personal experience and use I statements. I had a bad belief system that all I was doing was just drinking a little beer, smoking a little pot when I'm 10 and 12 years old. And that belief system evolved into something much bigger. And eventually it led to using hardcore drugs and methamphetamines and giving me permission statements to do the things I wanted to do, because that's what you do when you're living in your addiction. And I try to impart that on people, especially young people going through stuff, but anybody of any age going through something, is we have to change belief systems in order to change us. And when we change those beliefs, those bad belief systems, the things we have to do in there, we have to figure out how we go back and fix things like resolving our resentments, get rid of resentments. Those resentments destroy you from the inside out. Your fears, you have to overcome those fears. Jon Gordon, my good friend and co-author, talks about fear and faith all the time. And he says, fear and faith have more in common than just the letter F they begin with. He says, fear and faith both believe in a future that hasn't happened yet. Right. Fear is a negative future and faith is a positive future. And John's always saying, choose faith over fear. And so you have to get down and you have to remove this stuff. You got to do a personal inventory. You've got to clean this stuff out. You got to go make your amends to people that you owe amends to. Clean this baggage out of your life, this trash out of your life, and start focusing on fixing you and becoming the best version of you possible. But it starts with this thing called servant leadership. And servant leadership is when your mindset is not inside of self, but it's about how can I be of most use to society today? How can I help someone else achieve their goals in life? How can I help someone else today? How can I raise them up to a different station in life? Because when we're helping other people, that's when we're at our best. And somebody's going to help us along the way too. And one of the things you brought up was this guy named Natrez Patrick. And how did what did we do with Natrez? Natrez was a linebacker at University of Georgia. And he got involved with some marijuana stuff. He got arrested for possession of marijuana. And they had to suspend him from the team. And I just talked to the football team. And so I talked Kirby Smart and the athletic director and the kid's mom, Natrez's mom, and to let me take Natrez to a Texas maximum security prison to kind of show him what the consequences of his decisions were. This is revolutionary. It's never been done before in the history of the NCAA that somebody's going to take this troubled athlete into a maximum security prison. But it gave me an opportunity to start something that I've been able to replicate several times. But the thing about it is with Natrez is taking him into that prison that day was an eye-opening experience in more than one way. Not just about his choices and consequences of his decisions, but about the realities of the America we live in. I drove Natrez in that day and I said, hey, Natrez, I want you to look at all the black and brown faces that look back at you, man, when you walk in here, especially the black face, because you're a black man in America, Natrez. He's a 20-year-old black male from Atlanta, got arrested for possession of marijuana, but Natrez has a bad belief system about marijuana. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm imparting to Natrez the reasons why it's such a big deal when I'm walking through a maximum security prison gate and he's locked in. And I'm telling him, Natrez, man, now your fingerprints are in the system. Now your mugshot's in the system. And by the way, this system is a machine with teeth and it wants to devour you. And speaking of the criminal justice system, when I've got Natrez in there and I talk to these athletes in these rooms about their decisions and where they can take you, there's not one criminal justice system in this country, Kevin. There's more than one. There's a black one, there's a white one, there's a brown one, there's a rich one, there's a poor one. I mean, there's one for, depending on who you are and where you fit in the spectrum, is the kind of justice you can expect to receive if you get caught up in the criminal justice system. And I'm not railing on America to bag on it and say, hey, America's so bad. I'm saying that there are some shortcomings that we have as a country that we need to address. And Natrez Patrick is in that category. It makes up almost half of the prison population in America, which is black men. But they only make up 6.5% of the population of this country. And that's what I'm telling Natrez. And Natrez got in there and it blew him away, Kevin. I mean, it freaked him out.
I bet.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he saw an environment. He saw these guys. And I even asked the guys in the room, the inmates in the room, how many people in here got started with a drug charge? And I mean, almost every hand in the room raises up because that's where it usually starts. And we've got to break that cycle, man. That substance abuse, the bad decision making, it starts with a bad belief, Kevin. And that's what I always try to do in any case, not just Natrez, is try to work on people's belief system.
Yeah, that's good. I guess when you talk about that belief system too, I'd be interested to know, Damon, we were talking before this, just about resiliency, and I think it's just, I attribute everything to kind of a mindset, and dealing with that adversity and what your response is to all of that. And I guess this makes complete sense to me. It resonates. I love that you don't have to win all your fights, but you have to fight all of them. But what would you say in terms of the coffee bean and all this with the mindset and all that? What if I don't know how to be a coffee bean? What if I don't have that mindset? What if I don't be able, like you talked about fear right away and being able to conquer it? What would you say to those people that struggle with that? Am I making sense there with all those things encompassed underneath all that?
No, because it makes perfect sense. And dovetails perfectly into when I got to prison. Prison was the most toxic and dangerous thing I've ever been through in my life. It was a very difficult atmosphere. The first 2 months of prison, which I chronicled in my autobiography, The Change Agent, it was overwhelming. And here's the deal. I was mad at a lot of things in life at that point. I got mad at Mr. Jackson when I got into this prison. Here's why I was mad at Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, you give me this fable of this carrot that's taking this coffee bean, this great little fable of how, the coffee bean jumps in and changes the water. But dude, you didn't give me an instruction book. You didn't give me a manual.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me. You forgot about that part. But the whole point of it was that I had to figure this out on my own. I had to figure out how to become that coffee bean because there's nobody that could have told me how to do that. And I can give people some tips along the way. I can tell them about how I did it. And it started out with me understanding one of the things that Jackson said, he gave me a clue, was about body language. Your body language changes the entire atmosphere everywhere you go. Not only does it change the room around you, but it changes you. I tell people all the time, smile, because your smile is going to release a chemical in your brain, these endorphins, and you're going to become positive. And that's something, now you've got something to give because you can't give what you don't have. But every big thing, it's like that riddle. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
That's right.
And so changing your life and becoming that coffee bean is going to take small things that happen. It's going to looking at every day as an opportunity. My first cellmate in prison, I tell people all the time, Kevin, that in my life, when I can get out and talk about faith a little bit, and my faith in God, in my life, God never reached down and said, hey, put his hand on my head and said, Damon, you're healed. It didn't work that way. God put people in my life. And I believe he does that with everybody. When I was younger, they were called coaches. They were called teachers. And as I got older, different people came in different forms. Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson's a black Muslim man in Dallas County Jail in his 60s, been in and out of prison all of his life. I've got zero in common with Mr. Jackson. And what if I'd have just said, hey, Jackson doesn't fit anything, any of the boxes to check off that look like me or by my background. I'm not going to listen to what he says, but I was in a point in time in life when I'm receptive to the messenger. And the messenger came in the form of a black man in Dallas County Jail. Well, the next messenger I got from God was a little Hispanic guy, my first cellmate in prison, this little bank robber from San Antonio named Carlos. And Carlos, about 5'2", a little bank robber. And Carlos is telling me that, he's like, look, man, you have to stop looking at prison as a punishment and start looking at prison as an opportunity.
What a perspective.
Mindset. When he first told me that, man, this guy's telling me we're inside of a maximum security prison. He's telling me, hey, man, prison is your opportunity. I'm like, what are you talking about? Prison is a punishment. He said, man, you got an opportunity to work on yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, become the best version of yourself possible. What are you prepared to do? And that's it, Kevin. That's really where the rubber sort of meeting the road in prison. Is I was like, hey, you know what? I've got a choice today. I can view this as a bad thing, or I can view it as a good thing. I can find the opportunities in adversity. And I think, I think you probably saw this as well too during the coronavirus. I mean, did you see examples of people that looked at this and said, hey, this is an opportunity, I'm gonna jump on it? And then the other examples of people that just laid down and took it and just curled up in a ball and let life kick them around. Right. That's what I saw a lot of out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I don't know how a situation like that doesn't end you. I mean, I consider myself to be a resilient person. I've dealt with a ton of adversity, very, very minimal to what yours is. But now you're a favorite of many, Damon. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, I followed your path. I read the book when I was waiting. We talked about my neck surgery. I was waiting in the chiropractor parking lot for 15 minutes, and I couldn't put it down. I read it from the beginning to the end. I was a little late to my appointment, but it starts August 1st, 2017. I think I recall your first talk with Dabo Swinney. Then he touches base with Nick Saban, and away we go. How does all this happen, Damon?
That's one of the lessons I talk about when I'm speaking to a corporation, a company, a business, an organization. Anybody really is, but that story is really used inside the corporate world. January of 2017. I've been out of prison for 14 months. I'm on parole for the rest of my life. I've got this amazing story to tell. I played college football back in the day, played quarterback, and I want to tell it to college football teams, but I've got zero access to college football coaches. Well, a buddy of mine calls me that day and says, hey, I've got a press pass to the Bear Bryant Coaching Awards show tonight in Houston, the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year Award. They're going to name the best college football coach in America. He said the 8 best coaches in the country will be in this room tonight. Do you want this press pass? And I was like, hell yes, I want that press pass. And so I drive the 90 miles to Houston after work, and he sneaks me in the Toyota Center, hit the ground running, and I meet all these coaches from all over America. I mean, Wisconsin, Penn State, USC, PJ Fleck. I mean, they're all there. And every one of these coaches I meet that night, I get to shake their hands, and every one of these coaches shoots me down. They tell me no. They're not rude about it, but they're just like, hey, don't call us, we'll call you.
Which is, yeah.
And I'm 7 of the 8 coaches down in the corner of the Toyota Center. I'm licking my wounds, and I'm actually telling myself, I'm talking to myself, Damon, go home, man. This other coach, this last coach, you can't even get to this guy. He just won the national championship 2 nights before, and everybody wants a piece of this guy's time. He will tell you no too. But then that voice kicked in, Kevin, that competitor, that voice that says, hey, you want to be a motivational speaker. What kind of motivational speaker just quits? And I mean, you survived prison. You survived. This guy's he's going to tell you no. That's nothing compared to what you've been through. This guy's telling you no to your face. So I watched and waited for my opportunity. I stalked Dabo Swinney throughout the room that night. And I finally got Dabo up against the wall. I mean, I pinned him down. I give him my elevator pitch, which is terrible. And Dabo will tell you to this day, it was like getting a drink of water from a fire hydrant. I was talking. And at the end of that, Dabo was like, hey, do you have a card? Shoved my card in his face. He grabs it and he said, we'll be in touch. And he takes off. And to me, that was a no. But I went home that night and I slept like a baby, Kevin. I forgot about that night because I left it all in the field. That's what we always talk about in sports. We always talk about in life. Exhaust all your resources, exhaust every avenue, try everything, make every last phone call you can, make every last sales call you can, and then call it a day. only when you're finished working. You know, practice doesn't end when the whistle blows; it ends when you're done.
Good stuff.
4 months later, I got an email from the director of football operations at Clemson, and he said, "Hey, Coach Swinney met you at an award show in Houston. Would love to have you come talk to the team. Do you have August 1st open?" Dude, I've got
them all open. Yeah, right.
Come on, I can do it tomorrow, man. When? So August 1st, 2017, like you had mentioned, I talked to the Clemson Tigers, defending national champions, and after the presentation's over, Dabo's got me against the wall, and he's like, "Damon, that was the most amazing story I've ever heard." He said, "I've never seen my guys respond like that to a speaker." He said, "Have you been to Alabama?" I'm like, "No, Dabo, I've been to Clemson, and I haven't been anywhere, So he helped me out. He started calling these coaches. He called Nick Saban. The next day, Alabama calls me. Alabama's calling me, asking me to come speak to their team now. And then a year later, I got a phone call from a guy named Jon Gordon. August of 2018. Jon Gordon, and the huge motivational speaker, and the Energy Plus guy, is on my phone. He's calling me. I follow this guy. How does he know who I am? So I asked him, "John, man, how do you know who I am? How'd you get my number, dude?" And he said, "Dabo Swinney." He said, "I was just in Dabo's office. I just spoke to the team. He can't stop talking about you, Damon." He said, "I looked you up. You have an amazing story." He said, "But the world needs the coffee bean message right now." He said this in 2018, Kevin. The world needs the coffee bean message. He said, "Damon, let's write this book together. We'll call it The Coffee Bean. It'll be a bestseller."
Unbelievable.
And so we did it. Coffee Bean came out in July of 19. Kevin, that book has sold like crazy because the world is in a pot of.
That's right.
So much so that we just wrote a children's book called The Coffee Bean for Kids to make a version of it for kids, because kids are going through the most confusing time in their lives right now. I mean, no one can prepare them for what they're going through right now with school. You got half virtual, half in person. The world is changing for them right now. So we wrote a book for them. It comes out in November. The Coffee Bean for Kids.
I'll be getting that for my kids for sure. I think it's truly commendable that you have Dabo Swinney, who has reached that pinnacle, but yet he's calling Nick Saban, who's out to beat him like crazy, to suggest that. And I think, when I hear you listen to that, I always say I can't take the hottest girl to prom unless I ask. I probably wouldn't be married if I didn't, right?
Yeah.
It's that ability, like you're willing to take that leap. You're willing to, I would say in recruiting, man, you'd hear no 99 times maybe before you heard 100. But there's a lot of people, Damon, that don't have that. You know what I mean? It's difficult for them to ask. It's getting them out of their comfort zone. It's fear. It's all those things that, that you talked about earlier. What suggestions or advice do you have for those people? How do they, is it possible that they can go from not being able to do something like that to being able to do something like that?
I think so. I think it's a choice. I think you have a choice of how you attack life. Do you accept your circumstances and say, "Hey, this is the best, this is as good as it gets"? Or do you say, "Hey, I want more"? And here's the deal. Most people, like you said, don't do that. And it's almost like, thankfully for those that are go-getters, those that do get up and say, "You know what, I want to do something better." I mean, imagine if every single person had that attitude. I mean, the competition would be stiffer, but where would we be productivity-wise? We'd be up here on a whole different level of cranking out this positivity and these ways of doing it. But I think it's a choice, Kevin. I think what happens is, can people do this? Yeah. What I think you need is perspective, either your own perspective or the perspective of someone else, to say, "Hey, you know what? That's an example of that. I've seen that it can be done. If he can do it, I can do it." And it's funny, man. What the perspective I have in life now is that I lived in a maximum security prison and I survived that. And not only that, but I live 4 miles away from the prison where I did my time. I drive by that prison. I jog by that prison. And I've got a constant reminder of what a bad day looks like, And as long as my feet don't hit the cold concrete floor of that prison cell, the Mark Stiles unit 4 miles away, I'm having a good day. I'm winning. And since I've been out of prison, November 16, 2015, I walked out of prison. Honestly, Kevin, I haven't had a bad day. Some days have been better than others, no doubt, but I know what a bad day looks like. And it's understanding that perspective of what a bad day truly looks like, because coronavirus, for example, was bad. But in the end, there were opportunities in there for everybody to turn their life around. There's a story I tell about this, and it's a story of Post and Kellogg's, because in the 1920s, there were two cereal companies in America. there was Post, and there was Kellogg. And Post was really the big cereal company. They had all the market share, and Kellogg's was a real small company, could never compete with Post until October of 1929, when the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began. And when that happened, Post quit doing the things that made them great. They stopped out of fear and out of doubt. The market crashed. They lost, they lost faith, and they stopped running radio ads. They stopped doing marketing. They laid a lot of people off, and they fired a lot of people. They hoarded a little bit of cash they had. Kellogg's, in the same event and time in history, they saw the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's finding the opportunity in adversity. So Kellogg's, what they did is they shoved all the rest of the money they had into radio marketing. They invented a new cereal during this time called Rice Krispies, and at the end of and within 4 years, 4 years into the pandemic, into the depression, by 1933, 4 years into it, Kellogg's overtook Post as the biggest cereal company in America, and they've never looked back since. Now, how did that happen? How did that small company like Kellogg's knock off the big juggernaut of Post in 4 short years? It's because of the lens that they view life through. And that's the thing. We have to change our lens. You have to live in a mindset that no matter what happens, there's going to be opportunity. And if I can just get out there and be that coffee bean, if I can find the positive in this, the goodness, then I can change my life. I can not just survive what I'm about to go through, but I'll thrive in it.
Hey, I would say all of that, Damon, is good stuff. Hey, two personal questions though, before I get you in some rapid fire. Number one, you ever talk to Mr. Jackson anymore? Is he around or not?
The most common question I get, the most frequent question I get, I don't know his real name. And I alluded to this earlier when we were talking. Mr. Jackson was a Muslim guy. And these guys that convert to Islam in there, they give up what's called their government name. They get rid of it. My government name would be Damon West. So I don't even know what his government name was. I never asked him. I never got his age. So I don't know his real name or his birthday. He went by the name Muhammad. And the reason why I call him Mr. Jackson is that's a name I gave him, a pseudonym, if you will. Because look, man, I live in the South. And I'm going around when I first get out of prison telling the story about the coffee bean. And even now, I understand that sometimes the messenger can kill the message. So instead of me going around telling people Muhammad told me this and Muhammad told me that, I figured it would be just easy to give him a generic name like Mr. Jackson. And that way the message isn't killed, because it's such an important message. And I don't want people, and I'm not accusing people of being, bigoted or racist or narrow-minded, but I am saying that I live in the realities and the confines of the United States of America. So I do know, it does go on.
For sure. And lastly, just a personal question that I know some people have asked me that I love. Damon, would you change any of it?
I do have some, obviously, the victims that I created along the way, not just the victims of my burglaries, but my family. And I put these people through a lot of pain, hurt, suffering, and loss. You do hope that they recover, that they find a way through it. I can never apologize to my victims because the state law of Texas says you can't do that. So I don't try to go out and make apologies to them. I do try to make what's called living amends, because I'm in a program of recovery. As an alcoholic and an addict, I need a program of recovery, and our program of recovery requires me to make amends to people wherever I can. And if you can't make amends to people, you go out and do good works, good deeds. And so I see that my life is going to be, committed to doing good works and good deeds for the rest of my life, to change or to make amends for the things I've done to those that I can't make amends to. But would I change it? No. And here's why. Because I do believe that God uses people to show what he can do. And unfortunately, for the people that have had to sacrifice the most, my victims, this was the horrible experience for them. I was a huge negative factor in the lives of so many people when I was strung out on drugs and messed up on meth. But in the end, I truly believe that I can take this bad experience that was for so many and turn it into something positive for the rest of the world to see. Because we talked earlier about you can't deny what you can see. And here's an example of a guy that went into a dungeon, went to the pit of hell, and came out the best version of himself possible. How did that happen? How did that transformation happen? How did that caterpillar become a butterfly? And that's the transformation that I think God uses us to do that kind of stuff. Just like I said, God puts people in my life. God's going to put me in other people's lives. And I've got to know that going out in this life, it's not the Damon West show. It's the God show. And as long as I always remember that, keep God first in everything I do, then I'll be allowed to continue to do this. And I won't go back to prison because I'm on parole the rest of my life. Right. I tell people all the time, I'm not worried about that parole. Texas can keep their parole. I'm not worried about that because as long as I'm a coffee bean, I'm never going back. But I've got to start each day, Kevin, with a prayer that locks me into what my purpose is. And it's the same prayer I've been praying since I got into recovery in prison. And it's this. I mean, I just ask God for two things every morning. That's it. God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize it when I see it. I don't want to miss that. I just want to look for ways to serve, find ways to help other people out because, Kevin, at the end of the day, we're here for each other. And, it's never been more of a time of need in America than right now. You're about to see these rent protections that are about to be lifted, and there's no more stimulus money to pump into the economy. We're about to see a country in real pain, a world in real pain from shutting down the economy. We've got to find a way to meet people's needs head on. And I think the best way I can do it is to go out there and tell my story as many places as possible.
It's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Well, hey, I love the time. Damon, I could probably sit here and talk to you all day, but I know you have things to do and I probably need to do some things too. But, and you go to all these schools and you throw the football, man. I see a lot of these completions on social media, but I'm going to put you in 3-pointers now and allow you to shoot the jumper a little bit. So we'll test it out. Number one, if people could learn one thing from this talk and just take something away and hold on to it, what would you want it to be?
That the power to change any situation, the power to change your world is inside you. And that's the overlying theme of what I'm talking about, that just like that coffee bean, the power is inside you. And you can unlock that anytime. It's a choice to have a bad day, Kevin, because at the end, no matter what, I learned this inside of a maximum security prison. No matter what time of day it is, I can start my day over again and have a good day. If I'm having a bad day, look, I go through days of being the carrot. I go through days of being the egg. My wife told me last week I was the carrot and the egg in the same day. So it happens. Life is hard. Life is tough. But at any time you want, you can stop your day and turn it around. That is a choice. It is a choice to have a bad day. And you can say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to live like that carrot or that egg, and jump in that pot of boiling water called life and tell life, you know what? Turn it up. I got this. And the longer the coffee bean sits in the pot of boiling water, Kevin, the stronger the pot of coffee is going to be. The power is inside you.
If Damon West could have come over here today and been in Kevin's shoes, what would have you asked of Damon that I did not ask today?
That's a good question, Kevin. I think that the question is, where is the balance? Where is the balance with what you're doing, with what I'm doing in life, and how does it affect, your personal life? Coronavirus is it's almost like a case study. I went for 4 months and I was at home all the time. And I gave away, my presentation because I felt like God wanted me to go out and just give away the coffee bean message. Did it for 4 months, did over 100 Zoom calls for 4 months for free to anybody that needed it. I was at home a lot. Now that the country's opened back up, I've made myself available to go out and speak, and I'm on the road a lot. But you do realize that there has to be a balance there with your life. I go for a week at a time without seeing my wife or my stepdaughter, and I miss them, and I miss them. But I'm not going to complain about getting out there again. And my wife is such a great partner in life and everything we do, and she's very supportive of it. And there has to be a balance, though, and that's the thing. I think people secretly want to know, man, are you holding on to your balance? Are you okay? And Kevin, the answer to that question would be that I think a lot of people want to know is are you okay balance wise? And I am, because I have a program of recovery, and that program of recovery keeps me grounded. I try to make 2 or 3 meetings a week to AA, speak to my sponsor, work the steps. Traveling a lot, you don't always get to make meetings. On the road, I try to find meetings in places I go. But if I'm not in meetings, I read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that helps me out. And I talk to my sponsor weekly, and that helps too. But a program of recovery is the most important thing. So people want to know, man, if do you lose everything if you lose that balance? And the answer to the question is that, what about that balance? And here's the balance. I have to put recovery in front of everything, Kevin. If I lose my recovery, I lose it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Lastly, I mean, you've given us a ton of this already, and good stuff is the name of this, and just something I say. But is there anything else that you feel would be appropriate? Any good stuff to wrap this up with anything that's going on now? Anything in general that you alluded to with faith, race? What would it be here?
Yeah, the race stuff. It occurs to me, that the worst thing someone can do, in my opinion, when talking about an issue that's complex or something they don't agree with, is tell you that they don't agree with it or something, or tell you what's wrong without telling you how to fix it. Right? So don't come in here and just crap all over everything I'm doing and just fly off like a seagull. That's what seagulls do. They come in, they make a lot of noise, they crap everywhere, and they fly off. I'm not going to be a seagull. With race, I talked about race earlier with the problems we have with race, and racism in America is a hot topic right now. But racism has been around a long time. Racism exists when there's an imbalance of power, Kevin, and that imbalance of power means that one side has more power than the other side. And in the free world, in the world we live in, whites have that power. We do. We've always had that power in this country, and it's difficult for a white person to discuss race in America. It's very difficult for a white person because white people have never experienced racism in America. When a white friend comes up and says, "Hey, that person of color was racist towards me," I check them. I stop them. I'm like, "No, what you mean is they were prejudiced towards you." And prejudice means to prejudge. That's the root word of it. And unfortunately, people of all races can be prejudiced against each other. You see prejudice in all forms out in the world. But racism is something totally unique to being white, because whites have that power. So I do think I'm the right guy to talk about this stuff because I have experienced racism as a white guy. I've been in a maximum security prison where everything is about race. Like Mr. Jackson said, you can't sit in the first row of benches that's for the blacks. So there are benches I couldn't sit on. I got my face kicked in because I was a white guy. Being white wasn't exactly a privilege inside of prison. So I understand racism, and I can get on the level and talk about it. And I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to say what the wrongs are with America, what the ills are of this country. Man, America's sick right now, Kevin. But I want to fix America, and that's when I go in all these rooms and talk to these athletes and these people, these corporations. I want to fix America. So how do we fix it? Because I'm not going to tell you how bad it is without telling you how to fix it. Here's how I think we fix it. White people that look like you, people that look like me. We got to get off the sidelines and get in the game. Really get in the game. That means we're ready to play ball. We got our chin straps on with our mouthpiece in. We've got the intent to go out and run some plays. But what we've got to do is wait for the play to be called. We've got to start listening. White people have got to start listening to what blacks are saying because white people don't understand racism because we've never experienced it. Now, black people have a job to do too. Black people have to invite white people into these rooms, and they have to invite us into these rooms with grace. And what I mean with grace is that means that it's almost a safe space. When you come into these rooms, you invite white people in these rooms, black people invite white people in, it means, hey, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to start talking about this stuff because if we don't communicate about it, nothing's going to happen. And if we communicate about it, you say the wrong thing as a white person, you're not going to lose everything. You're not going to get canceled out in this cancel culture because I know a lot of good white people, Kevin. You and I have talked. You're one of them that want to talk about race, but just don't know how to do it. And you have some fear about doing it, legitimate fear that if you say the wrong thing, you'll get canceled out. And we're not going to get anywhere with that. I tell black people all the time, you want to change what's going on in America, you're not going to do it with just black voices. You've got to recruit white people in to get this thing going. And once you get white people fighting the fight with you, once your fight becomes their fight, then we can make some change. Then we get together on the grassroots level and make some change. And one of the things I relate with to blacks all the time is like, look, man, the summer of 2020 was a chance for you to get up and start throwing some punches and land some licks because you've been held down for so long. And it felt good. And I know what that feels like, Kevin. I know what it feels like to be held down for so long. You finally get up and get to punch someone back in the face. It feels good, but it's a temporary good feeling. And what happens when you do that is you're not fighting smarter. You're fighting harder. We've got to start fighting smarter. We've got to get, black people have to get white people invested emotionally, empathetically into their cause. And that's only going to happen when that room and that safe space is going to be done. White people have to start listening. Black people got to invite us in with grace. And then we get together and we change this country.
Well, I don't know when the last time was that you shot a basketball. You just went 3 for 3, though. You knocked them all down. Hey, in closing here, Damon, let's just let's connect people to you that aren't already connected to you. You know, website, social media, books, upcoming, any of that. Can you just fill them in, please?
Yeah, my website is damonwest.org. My Twitter and Instagram handles are at damonwest7. And, you know, upcoming book, Kevin, I got that. The Coffee Bean for Kids comes out November 24th, man. John and I are really excited about that. We're about to start really hitting the promotional stuff hard for it. But outside of that, I've got the Coffee Bean. I've got the Change Agent. And they all be purchased at Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, anywhere books are sold. Makes great stocking stuffers, man. Kids K through 4, this book is going to change their lives.
Got it. Well, we're all over it, man. Hey, Damon, thanks a ton. Thanks a ton for who you've become, what you're doing, the impact you're having. I know once again we talked and just the authenticity, the you being transparent, not stepping away or just taking a seat. You know, you being vulnerable. All these characteristics that you put on display throughout the country and the impact and influence that you're having on so many people. I greatly appreciate it. And I just continue to bless you along the way with everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Hey, man, Kevin, thanks for the opportunity and thank you for your patience, brother.
Yeah, no problem. Well, hey, there is unbelievable amount of good stuff in today's episode. I think Damon touched on so many issues that a lot of us, if we look ourselves in the mirror, we know, you know, they're existing in our lives and we have that choice. We have that opportunity to do something about that. And I would challenge you with those today. So thank you for joining us. As always, you can find us on YouTube, Good Stuff with Kevin, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Until next time, good stuff.
Thanks, Kevin.